Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We have been reading from Cantor 1, Creation, Chapter 9, Bhishmadeva, Passing of Bhishmadeva in the presence of Lord Krishna. And we have read up to verse 32 so far, and we will begin from verse 33. We have been reading the translation and the purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatam aham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Translation of verse 33. Shri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjun. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamala tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. Purport. When Shri Krishna by his own internal pleasure appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental bodies are desired in all the three worlds, namely the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Arjun is described here as the conqueror, and Krishna is described as his intimate friend. Bhishmadeva, on his bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra, is remembering the particular dress of Lord Krishna which he put on as the driver of Arjun's chariot. While fighting was going on between Arjun and Bhishma, Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy Arjun for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjun was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. Bhishmadev takes this opportunity to address the Lord as Vijay Sakhe, friend of Arjun. Because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees who are related with him in different transcendental humors, while Krishna was the charioteer of Arjun, sun rays glittered on the dress of the Lord, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhishmadev. As a great fighter, he was relishing the relation of Krishna in the chivalrous humor. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas, that is the humors, is relishable by the respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. Less intelligent mundaners who want to make a show of being transcendentally related with the Lord artificially jump at once to the relation of conjugal love, imitating the damsels of Rajadham. Such a cheap relation with the Lord exhibits only the base mentality of the mundaner, because one who has relished conjugal humor with the Lord cannot be attached to worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by mundane ethics. The eternal relation of a particular soul with the Lord is evolved. A genuine relation of the living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of the five principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhishmadev is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendentally related with the Lord. Verse 34 from chapter 9, Cantor 1, translation. On the battlefield where Shri Krishna attended Arjun out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses, and because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Shri Krishna. Purport. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the five principal relations, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya and Madhurya, that is neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, parental affection and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhishmadeva is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. It appears that Bhishmadeva is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord, but factually the Lord's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. His body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. So also it is stated in Skanda Puran, it is said that spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed, nor can it be dried up. When Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encaged just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers who are always alert to kill the Lord even from the very beginning of his appearance. Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna and Ravan wanted to kill Rama because foolishly they were unaware of the fact that Lord is never killed, for the spirit is never annihilated. Therefore, Bhishmadeva's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist, but those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Bhishmadeva appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord because he did not leave Arjun alone, although he was disturbed by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadeva, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though he was ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love with the Lord, remarks very saliently in this regard. He says, the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadeva were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the Lord's body directed by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there is a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee, Sri Bhishmadeva, was not at all mundane. Besides that, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharpened arrows are misleading to the common man, but one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds caused by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadeva. The word Vibhidhyamana is significant, that is in the verse, because the Lord's skin is not different from the Lord, because our skin is different from our soul. In our case, the word Vibhidhyaman or being bruised and cut would have been quite suitable. Transcendental bliss is of different varieties, and the variety of activities in the mundane world is but a perverted reflection of transcendental bliss. Because everything in the mundane world is qualitatively mundane, it is full of inebrities, whereas in the absolute realm, because everything is of the same absolute nature, there are varieties of enjoyment without inebriety. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishmadeva, and because Bhishmadeva is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. Verse 35, translation. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Now the purport of verse 35 of chapter 9, Cantor 1 Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavad-Gita, first chapter, verses 21 to 25, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Sri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees. And Bhishmadeva was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually, it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. Verse 36, chapter 9, Cantor 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, translation. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Purport. The kings and commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of qualification, as it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All the executive heads of both parties like Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna and Duryodhana were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or saw them with great compassion Whether he be Arjun or Duryodhan, all the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjun saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhan, but as a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural to him. And thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions, but this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said that here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Apparently, Arjun's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita for the good of all polluted conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of the false material body. The Bhagavad-Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. Verse 37, translation: fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up his wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Purport: the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit. Like a friend's fight with another friend, Duryodhan criticized Bhismadeva, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjun because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhismadeva therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhan was satisfied and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By trick, Arjun took the arrows from Duryodhan, and Bhishmadeva could understand that this was the trick of the Lord. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise his friend Arjun would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishmadeva fought so violently that both Arjun and Krishna were in trouble. Arjun was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishmadeva the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjun, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishmadeva in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. I'll repeat this. Arjun was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhismadeva the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own, seemingly broke his own promise. That is Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjun, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishmadeva in an angry mood. As a lion goes to kill an elephant, he dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishmadeva at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjun was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjun's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot, but because Bhishmadeva wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created the situation, making Arjun's death appear imminent. He stood before Bhishmadeva to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. Verse 38, chapter 9, Cantor 1 from Srimad Bhagavatam. Translation: May He, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to wounds. Purport: by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. The dealings of Lord Krishna and Bhishmadeva on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Lord Sri Krishna appear to be partial to Arjun and at enmity with Bhishmadeva, but factually all this was especially meant to show special favor to Bhishmadeva, a great devotee of the Lord. The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee even in the garb of an enemy. The Supreme Lord cannot have any enemy, nor can a so-called enemy harm him because he is Ajita or unconquerable. But still he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position. Although no one can be superior to the Lord, these are some of the transcendental reciprocatory dealings of the devotee with the Lord, and those who have no information of pure devotional service cannot penetrate into the mystery of such dealings. Bhishmadeva played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposely pierced the body of the Lord so that to the common eyes it appeared that the Lord was wounded, but factually all this was to bewilder the non-devotees. The all-spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. Had it been so, Bhishmadeva would not have desired to take the very same Lord as the ultimate destination of his life. Had Bhishmadeva been an enemy of the Lord, Lord Krishna could have annihilated him without even moving. There was no need to come before Bhishmadeva with blood and wounds, but he did so because the warrior devotee wanted to see the transcendental beauty of the Lord decorated with wounds created by a pure devotee. This is the way of exchanging transcendental rasa or relations between the Lord and the servitor. By such dealings, both the Lord and the devotee become glorified in their respective positions. The Lord was so angry that Arjun checked him when he was moving towards Bhishmadeva, but in spite of Arjun's checking, he proceeded towards Bhishmadeva as a lover goes to lover without caring for hindrances. Apparently, his determination was to kill Bhishmadeva, but factually it was to please him as a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here Bhishmadeva aspires to see the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. Verse 39, chapter 9, Cantor 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam, translation. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjun, who stood with the whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjun's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Purport: A pure devotee of the Lord constantly sees the presence of the Lord within himself because of being transcendentally related by loving service. Such a pure devotee cannot forget the Lord for a moment. This is called trance. The mystic yogi or the yogi tries to concentrate upon the supersoul by controlling the senses from all other engagements, and thus he ultimately attains samadhi. A devotee more easily attains samadhi or trance by constantly remembering the Lord's personal feature along with his holy name, fame, pastimes, etc. Therefore, the concentration of the mystic yogi and of the devotee are not on the same level. The concentration of the mystic is mechanical, whereas that of the pure devotee is natural in pure love and spontaneous affection. Bhismadeva was a pure devotee, and as a military marshal, he constantly remembered the battlefield feature of the Lord as Partha Sarthi, the chariot driver of Arjuna. Therefore, the Lord's pastime at Parthasarthi is also eternal, the pastime of the Lord beginning from his birth at the prison house of Kamsa up to the Maushala Leela at the end, all move one after another in all the universes. Just as the clock hand moves from one point to another, and in such pastimes his associates like Pandav and Bhishma are constant, eternal companions, so Bhishmadev never forgot the beautiful feature of the Lord as Parthasarthi, which even Arjun could not see. Arjun was behind the beautiful Parthasarthi, while Bhishmadev was just in front of the Lord. As far as the military feature of the Lord is concerned, Bhishmadev observed this with more relish than Arjun. All the soldiers and persons on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original spiritual form like the Lord after their death. Because of the causeless mercy of the Lord, they were able to see him face to face on that occasion. The conditioned souls rotating in the evolutionary cycle from the aquatics up to the form of Brahma are all in the form of Maya, or the form obtained by one's own actions and awarded by material nature. The material forms of the conditioned souls are all foreign dresses, and when the conditioned soul becomes liberated from the clutches of material energy, he attains his original form. The impersonalists want to attain the impersonal Brahman effulgence of the Lord, but that is not at all congenial to the living sparks, parts and parcel of the Lord. Therefore, the impersonalists fall down and get material forms, which are all false to the spirit soul. A spiritual form like the Lord's, either two-handed or four-handed, is attained by the devotees of the Lord either in the Vaikuntha or the Golok planet according to the original nature of the soul. This form, which is 100% spiritual, is the Swarup of the living being, and all the living beings who participated on the battlefield of Kurukshetra on both sides attained their Swarup as confirmed by Bhishmadev. So Lord Shri Krishna was not merciful only to the Pandavas, he was also merciful to the other parties because all of them attained the same result. Bhishmadev wanted the same facility also, and that was his prayer to the Lord. Although his position as an associate of the Lord is assured in all circumstances, the conclusion is that whoever dies looking on the personality of God within or without attains his Swarup, which is the highest perfection of life. Verse 40. Translation: let my mind be fixed upon Lord Shri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted by the damsels of Rajadham, that is the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. And we know yesterday was the full moon wax the waxing full moon or the Shukla Paksha full moon, and this was the second Rasa dance of Kartik. Purport: by intense ecstasy in living service, the damsels of Brajabhumi attained qualitative oneness with the Lord by dancing with him on an equal level, embracing him in nuptial love, smiling at him in joke and looking at him with a loving attitude. The relation of the Lord with Arjun is undoubtedly praiseworthy for devotees like Bhishmadeva, but relation of the gopis with the Lord is still more praiseworthy because of their still more purified loving service. By the grace of the Lord, Arjun was fortunate enough to have the fraternal service of the Lord as chariot driver, but the Lord did not award Arjun with equal strength. The gopis, however, practically became one with the Lord by attainment of equal footing with the Lord. Bhishma's aspiration to remember the gopis is a prayer to have their mercy also at the last stage of his life. The Lord is satisfied more when his pure devotees are glorified, and therefore Bhishmadeva has not only glorified the acts of Arjun, his immediate object of attraction, but has also remembered the gopis who were endowed with unrivaled opportunities for rendering loving service to the Lord. The gopis' equality with the Lord should never be misunderstood to be like the Sayujya liberation of the impersonalists. The equality is one of the perfect ecstasy where the differential conception is completely eradicated, for the interests of the lover and the beloved become identical. Verse 41, translation. At the Rajsuya Yajna, or the sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon Lord. Purport: after gaining victory in the battle of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthir, the emperor of the world, performed the Rajsuya sacrificial ceremony. The emperor in those days, upon his ascendance to the throne, would send a challenge horse all over the world to declare his supremacy, and any ruling prince or king was at liberty to accept the challenge and express his tacit willingness either to obey or to disobey the supremacy of the particular emperor. One who accepted the challenge had to fight with the emperor and establish his own supremacy by victory. The defeated king would have to sacrifice his life, making a place for other king or ruler. So Maharaj Yudhishthir also dispatched such challenging horses all over the world, and every ruling prince and king all over the world accepted Maharaj Yudhishthir's leadership as the emperor of the world. After this, all rulers of the world under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthir were invited to participate in the great sacrificial ceremony of Rajsuya. Such performances required hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was not an easy job for a petty king. Such a sacrificial ceremony, being too expensive and also difficult to perform under present circumstances, is now impossible in this age of Kali, nor can anyone secure the required expert priesthood to take charge of the ceremony. So after being invited, all the kings and great learned sages of the world assembled in the capital of Maharaj Yudhishthir. The learned society, including the great philosophers, religionists, physicians, scientists, and all great sages, was invited. That is to say, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas were the topmost leading men in the society, and they were all invited to participate in the assembly. The Vaishyas and Shudras were unimportant elements in society, and they are not mentioned herein. Due to the change of social activities in the modern age, the importance of men has also changed in the terms of occupational positions. So in the great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was the cynosure of neighboring eyes. Everyone wanted to see Lord Krishna, and everyone wanted to pay his humble respects to the Lord. Bhismadeva remembered all this and was glad that his worshipful Lord, the personality of Godhead, was present before him in his actual formal presence. So to meditate the Supreme Lord is to meditate on the activities, form, pastimes, name and fame of the Lord. That is easier than what is imagined as meditation on the impersonal feature of the Supreme. In the Bhagavad-Gita 12.5, it is clearly stated that to meditate upon the impersonal feature of the Supreme is very difficult. It is practical, no meditation or simply a wasteful of time, because very seldom is the desired result obtained. The devotees, however, meditate upon Lord's factual form and pastimes, and therefore the Lord is easily approachable by the devotees. This is also stated in Bhagavad-Gita 12.9. The Lord is non-different from the transcendental activities. It is indicated also in this shloka that Lord Shri Krishna, while actually present before human society, especially in connection with the battle of Kurukshetra, was accepted as the greatest personality of the time. Although he might not have been recognized as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the propaganda that a very great man is worshipped as God after his death is misleading, because a man after his death cannot be made into God, nor can the personality of Godhead be a human being even when he is personally present. Both ideas are misconceptions. The idea of anthropomorphism cannot be applicable in the case of Lord Krishna. Verse 42, translation. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Shri Krishna, now present before me, because I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. Purport: Lord Shri Krishna is the one absolute supreme personality of Godhead, but he has expanded himself into his plenary portions by his inconceivable energy. The conception of duality is due to ignorance of his inconceivable energy. In the Bhagavad-Gita 9.11, the Lord says that only the foolish take him to be a mere human being. Such foolish men are not aware of his inconceivable energies. By his inconceivable energy, he is present in everyone's heart, as the sun is present before everyone all over the world. The Paramatma feature of the Lord is an expansion of his plenary portions. He expands himself as Paramatma in everyone's heart by his inconceivable energy, and he also expands himself as the glowing effulgence of Brahma Jyoti by expansion of his personal glow. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita that the Brahma Jyoti is his personal glow. Therefore, there is no difference between him and his personal glow, Brahma Jyoti, or his plenary portions as Paramatma. I'll repeat. Therefore, there is no difference between him, that is Lord, and his personal glow, the Brahma Jyoti, or his plenary portions as Paramatma. Less intelligent persons who are not aware of this fact consider Brahma Jyoti and Paramatma to be different from Shri Krishna. This misconceptions of duality is completely removed from the mind of Bhishmadeva, and he is now satisfied that it is Lord Shri Krishna only who is all in everything. This enlightenment is attained by the great Mahatmas or devotees, as it is stated in Bhagavad-Gita 7.19, that Vasudeva is all in everything, and that there is no existence of anything without Vasudeva. Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, Shri Krishna, is the original supreme person, as now confirmed by a Mahajan, which is Bhishmadeva here, and therefore both the neophytes and the pure devotees must try to follow in his footsteps. That is the way of the devotional line. The worshipable object of Bhishmadeva is Lord Shri Krishna as Parthasarthi, and that of the gopis is the same Krishna in Vrindavan as the most attractive Shyam Sundar Sometimes less intelligent scholars make a mistake and think the Krishna of Vrindavan and that of the battle Kurukshetra are different personalities. But for Bhishmadeva, this misconception is completely removed. Even the impersonalist object of destination is Krishna as the impersonal Jyoti, and Yogi's destination of Paramatma is also Krishna. Krishna is both Brahma Jyoti and localized Paramatma, but in Brahma Jyoti or Paramatma there is no Krishna or sweet relations with Krishna. In his personal feature, Krishna is both Parthasarthi and Shyam Sundar of Vrindavan, but in his impersonal feature, he is neither in the Brahma Jyoti nor in the Paramatma. Great Mahatmas like Bhishmadeva realize all these different features of Lord Shri Krishna, and therefore they worship Lord Krishna, knowing him as the origin of all features. Verse 43, translation. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishmadeva merged himself in the Supersoul Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight and actions, and thus he became silent. And his breathing stopped. Purport: the stage attained by Bhishmadeva while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalp Samadhi because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight he began to see the Lord personally present before him, and thus all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists